Hello. This presentation is done by Group 3, Kevin, Sadie, Natasha, and Collin. We did ours on Russia and Coop Group. To get started, first we will talk about Russia as the country. Russia has 3 highlighted historical periods. First is the early period, which is when Russia was home to many tribes of nomadic pastoralists. Pastoralists are basically sheep or cattle farmers who move around within their region to find good pastures for their animals. Another main feature of this period was their mounted warfare. It was a very key feature in their lifestyle and how wars were fought on horses. The ancestors of these the modern Russia are the Slavic tribes who populated Western Russia. Next, we have Imperial Russia. It was introduced by ruler Peter the Great, recognized as an emperor and world power in 1721. There were many wars during this time, including the Great Northern War, 7 Years' War, Napoleonic War, and Russo-Persian War. The notable empires during this time were Peter I, Elizabeth, Catherine II, Alexander I, II, and III, and Nicholas I and II. The last and leading up to the current stage of Russian history was the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin was the face of the Soviet Union, and he also brought the Communist Party to Russia. This transitioned to a major industrial powerhouse during this time. The Russians reconquered former territories such as Western Ukraine and the Herzegovina region. The relationship with this is with Hitler's Germany, because it was a very unstable time within the whole world, and it led to many major battles during World War II. Next, I will talk about Russian politics. They're currently recognized as the Russian Federation. Boris Yeltsin was elected the first president in June 1991. He later resigned in 1999. Then Vladimir Putin won the 2000 election, and Dmitry Medvedev was the prime minister. But during this time, there were some struggling times in the economy, and there was questionable reforms that resulted in very heavy criticism. But then towards the end of Putin's time, his leadership over the return and order of the stability allowed for admiration for him. Then when he was over, Dmitry Medvedev was elected in 2008, moving from prime minister to president, and Putin was moved back to prime minister. And then at the conclusion of his term in 2012, Putin returned to his presidential role, as the two just simply switched places. And Putin is the current president of Russia. How this works is the prime minister is appointed by the president of the Russian Federation and confirmed by the State Duma. He or she succeeds to the presidency if the current president dies, is incapacitated, or resigns. The government issues its acts in the way of decisions and orders. The next thing to talk about is Russian culture. Their language consists of 160 ethnic groups that accounts for the over 100 languages spoken throughout the country. Over 25% of the world's literature is published in Russian, and one of 6 official languages of the United Nations. So Russian is the main language spoken in the country. Their literature dates back to the 10th century, and it's considered a literature staple during the 18th century. Their literature was heavily influenced by the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the ensuing Civil War. The Soviet era was referred to as the golden age of scientific fiction. Their architecture, which is shown on this page, is very beautiful and very big and very prominent within their country. They're very proud of these places, including the Grand Kremlin Place, the Hermitage, St. Isaac's Cathedral, Peter and Paul Fortress, and the Red Square. Next to talk about is Russian geography. Their global position is very important. They are the largest country in the world, which adds to a lot of why they're a very powerful country. They share borders with 14 countries, which is very much, and you can see that they're listed here. And they just stretch from so far of a span throughout the world. It's divided into 85 administrative territorial divisions. There's 22 republics, 9 kreis, which are territories, 46 oblasts, which are provinces, 1 autonomous oblast, 4 autonomous okrugs, which are districts, and their 3 big federal cities are St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Sevastopol. Russian demographics, like I said earlier, they are the largest country in the world. They cover 1/8 of the Earth's inhabited area, which is a huge fraction. Here's their total amount of land that they have within their country, and they're the 9th highest populated country, so they are in the top 10 for population. As of 2014, the population reached 1 million people. Ethnic Russians comprise of 81% of the country, and an estimated 10 million illegal immigrants in Russia from ex-Soviet states. Here are their birth and death rates and the averages decided by the European Union, and they're projected to have 146 million population projected in the year 2025. So here I'm just going to read some interesting Russian facts that kind of make Russia the country that they are. Russia is actually bigger than Pluto, which is a planet. It's a criminal offense to drive around a dirty car in Russia. In Russia, there are 9 million more women than men. In 1908, the Russian Olympic team arrived 12 days late to the Olympic Games because they used the wrong calendar. In 1867, the U.S. purchased Alaska from Russia for just $7.2 million. To this day, Japan and Russia still haven't signed a peace treaty to end World War II. During Peter the Great's reign, a beard tax was paid by anyone who had a beard. And some alcohol-related facts, since Russians are very known for their vodka. An average Russian consumes 18 liters of alcohol per year, which is 2 times the amount of dangerous level. As a result, over 500,000 alcohol-related deaths come in Russia each year, and the word vodka actually comes from the word voda, which means water. So Russia's economy is very interesting. They are a high-income mixed economy. They transitioned from the Soviet Union to the Russian Federation in 1991, as discussed earlier. And as a result, Russia transitioned from a centrally planned economy to a globally integrated market economy. The big thing about Russia is that they currently contain over 30% of Earth's natural resources, which is including oil, natural gas, or precious metals. And this accounts for 70% of the country's total exports. So their natural resources actually account for the economy, and so their economy actually depends on the revenue from these resources for their economy to strive, and that's what makes it so great. It relies on their energy revenue along with these natural resources, which is very unique to other major economies who have to rely on other things. And Moscow is actually recognized as the billionaire capital of the world. So now moving on from Russia, now we can talk about the company Coop Group, which is actually one of Switzerland's largest retail and wholesale companies. Here listed are some company statistics, and these are as of 2014. One important one is number of employees, which is 74,955, and the equity ratio, which is 46.4%. This is their original structure for their business hierarchy. All their members are comprised of some types of structure, and here's the chart that you can see just kind of how their board of directors and executive committee works within their company. Their business practices, this is their mission statement and their website, and you can see at the top it says "Together to the Top," which just shows that Coop Group really motivates their company to do their best every day, each day. So Coop Group today, this is some of the things that they own. One that kind of stuck out to me was the body shop, because I actually know a lot of their products, and so knowing that they're under Coop Group is kind of interesting. They're structured in the form of a cooperative society with around 2.5 million members. They have 21 distinct retail subsets ranging in home furnishing to restaurants to travel agencies. They account for half of the organic food sold in Switzerland. In 2011, they were awarded the title World's Most Sustainable Retailer, which is a big name for them. And they have over 800 supermarkets in Switzerland. Coop Group is very big on sustainability. They are a sustainable retailer, and so they take people, animals, and the environment into consideration to determine the way they do business. This shows in the following overview of around 50 main topics and subtopics that concern their suppliers, partners, and customers. So they have 3 main brands that really emphasize sustainability, and they're listed here. One is Coop Oceoplan, and one's Coop Naturline, and one is Coop Naturoplan. Here is just a little graph of their percentage analysis. It's a breakdown of their net sales in Switzerland and abroad, their net sales Switzerland by main category, basically, which is just broken up into food and non-food, their percentages of retail on food, and then their percentages of retail on non-food. So now we will talk about the current entry strategy for Coop Group into Russia. So a current entry strategy usually involves enormous investments, money, and time to determine the entry mode. For selecting partners for the cooperation, goals and strategies between 2 companies never completely go hand in hand, so cooperation may be hard. But if companies do make an alliance, they usually last for many years. So selecting the right partner is very key. One risk of cooperation is that sometimes a company stops helping or contributing once it has achieved its own objectives. Another example of why selecting the right partner is right is that if one company finds hidden agenda, this may break the trust and deal between the 2. In order for the 2 companies to cooperate, each party's members must be comfortable and willing to work with one another. The culture environment is also very important, because you have to look at values, beliefs, languages, etc., and can differ greatly from one another. A great example of this would be a manager's being less confident managing the company's operations in that host country. There are worries could include a language barrier, but there could be cultural similarities as well, which would be very beneficial for Coop Group in Russia. This would encourage a positive feedback, creating a more likely investment from other companies. Their political and legal environment. The companies, it is very important for them to get along. Political instability creates a large risk when it comes to investing. If there's a large political difference between companies' investments, they are more likely to avoid large investments. The target market legal system can influence the entry mode as well. By this, I mean that if the target market has high tariffs and low quota limits, this would encourage investments. But if the target market has low tariffs and high quota limits, this would most likely discourage a company from investing. Governments may create laws that ban certain investments, like China did recently. The market size needs to be the right size that the company is looking for. It greatly influences the entry mode method. High domestic demand attracts investments. If the target market citizens have a rising income, this could lead to investment that would lead to expansion of a company. But if the company views that the market is going to stay small, a better entry mode may be more suiting, such as contractual entry. Production and shipment costs. Excuse me. Setting up production in the market is key. By this, I mean that the market is desirable for investment if the total cost of production there is lower than in the home market. Low production costs also might cause investments. International experience. Many companies enter the international market through exporting. After these 6 factors come into play, the companies must begin negotiating market entry. Step 1 is preparation. Negotiators must know what they want and what the company wants to achieve. Step 2 is opening positions. After the preparation is completed, the discussions begin between the two. After both sides are presented, the positions have to leave negotiators room to maneuver. Stage 3 is hard bargaining. This is where the big guns come in, or the power of each party between the two comes into play. Direct conflict usually will come into play here, which may lead to a company pulling out of a deal. And the final step is step 4, agreement and follow-up. If the first 3 stages have been completed, this is where the agreement begins. Negotiations were a success. So our recommended entry strategy is to follow the steps that IKEA have taken. The efforts to invest 200 million euros into Moscow. The hypermarkets will increase by 30%. There are some very big investment opportunities. Dmitry Bendivkov, who is the director of analysis department at Rus Investments. The retail sector in Russia is still attractive for foreigners because of its growth potential. These large chains make over 20% from overall retail turnover. At the same time, the marginality of the retail business is higher than in other countries. Also, they have to address purchasing power issue. Dmitry Bendovkov also said, the prospects of developing chains have worsened because of the growth of credit rates on one hand, and on the other because of cost and the fall of consumer demand. The conclusion is that if Coop Group follows the approach IKEA has, we believe that Coop Group can have the makings to be a very successful company in Russia. Here are the sources that we made, and here's the group contribution. Thank you very much.